All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this, the second to last community curator talk of the year 2023. Um, it is being recorded. You probably got a notification about that, and it will be posted on the website later. But my name is Jennings Mergenthal, and I'm a community engagement specialist here at the Science Museum. And I am thrilled to introduce Joe Vital, who is our community curator for this month. Now, Joe, do you have a more formal introduction that you wanna do for yourself?
Thanks, Jennings. Bonjour, Anin, Wajin, Wiju, Adijanakas, Megizi, Dudadem. Hello, all my relatives. My name is South Mountain. I am a member of the Red Lake Nation and also a member of the Eagle Clan. But my colonial name is Joseph Vital. I am a land defender, uh, community activist, and proud Southside member. Thrilled to be here and absolutely proud of this moment.
Fantastic. Well, could you tell us a little bit about your display and what you picked and why you picked it, and a little bit about the thought and intention that went into that?
Yeah, it was more of the gravitational pull. Um, Having gone and seen the Science Museum's collection, I was immediately drawn to the seeds that it has. And it was more of like a spiritual connection and one that is deeply rooted in my fight as a land defender and one that is, demanding land back from the colonial system. And it's in it's in relation to the rematriation movement that we're seeing all across Turtle Island, from here to South America and also to so-called Canada. And in my display, I have various seeds. Most of them are, beans. There's some sunflower, there's squash, but inside, seeds as well, corn of various colors. And the intentionality around that was to display, our relatives not only in a good way, but showcasing their beauty and how that not only needs to be at the forefront, but also needs to have that conversation of what are we doing with them and how do we return that. Again, the rematriation, there's been bodies back, there's been land back, seeds being our relatives are definitely a part of that conversation.
And this is, slightly a leading question because I know how you're going to answer, but so things like ethical returns and rematriation, do you view these as this is a reparative step, this is a positive gesture, or as this is what is necessary to level the playing field once again? This is the beginning to redress a harm instead of a positive look what we're doing all by ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of twofold, and this is a positive
Rebecca,
step.
you're not on mute.
Victoria, you're not on mute either.
Sorry.
You know, what's funny is you can hear it through Jennings as well. Um, no, it's a positive step. Regardless, it's a hard conversation to have, because there are things, outside of the seed, but also other artifacts that the Science Museum has in its possession that requires further conversation on what to do. And I think there's been tremendous steps going forward, especially with that in regards to Indigenous folks being able to come into the Science Museum free of charge. Their parking is also covered. Um, and so it's that conversation starter so that when folks who are visiting this exhibit can not only become familiar with the terms like what is rematriation, what exactly does that mean, and what does it mean for Indigenous folks, but also what does it mean for them in terms of advocacy and that forethought. Um, is ultimately having the seeds return to the tribes. Is that what is necessary? Again, I'm just one person, but it's part of that ongoing conversation. But the museum having this program allowing me to not only showcase these relatives, but also to bring this conversation forward, I think is a tremendous step forward.
And you mentioned the exhibit being able to inform people about these about terms and concepts they might not otherwise be familiar with. And one of the things that we intentions behind the community curator program was in response to community desires for more agency and autonomy in telling stories of objects in the museum, objects and relatives in the museum collection in their own words. But I think one of the things about the community curator project is that it's been educational as well as representational. So it's not just for people to come in and learn about some other group, but also for people to come and see people who look like them in the museum space. Do you think about your display in those terms at all, balancing those two, or?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the huge benefit of the program is not only the representation, like physically, but that of culture in space and in time, because culture is ever changing. Land back wasn't, I mean, there was always the hope for land back, but it becoming a mainstream term. Even rematriation is something that is picked up steam in recent time. And so it's seeing not only folks that look like me, but also represent some of the forethought and the thinking and the fighting in at the grassroots level that people can relate to. Again, rematriation is something that has become a huge movement, but to see it displayed at such a large institution is not only relatable, but it makes the science museum that much more of a shared space for community.
And could you tell us a little bit about your experience of working with the museum collections and coming in and yeah.
I mean, I see Rebecca is here, but absolute professionals all around. Jokingly, I think I had a better experience with the staff than they probably did with me, given my own schedule. But that is something that comes with working with community. As you know, as a community engagement specialist, it's as you're interacting with different cultures, the understanding of timelines shift and vary, and then priorities. However, the museum staff, all the way from design to curation to historian, like all of them brought their expertise, because personally I wouldn't classify myself as an artist. However, they brought that expertise to help me consolidate my thoughts, my ideas, um, at many times improving upon them. Again, with like my consent, but they helped usher in, because these are folks with like decades of experience, which I think is incredibly valuable. So that is another thing I would add to like the question that we had before of like that representation, but also that shared knowledge, so that when folks like myself who were part of this program can take this and bring it forward to other type of curating events. um, so absolute kudos to the professionals. And I would also add each one was always open to the difficult conversation about the returning of our relatives. Like I said, it's a hard conversation even for those who like quote unquote get it, because staff represent or are in this weird place of they are the institution, but they also are working directly with community. And a lot of the staff like are very personable and understanding. And I think they weaved that space very well. And so I'd recommend anybody who considers themselves an artist or has an inkling to, participate in this program. There's a lot of great people here at the Science Museum.
Yeah, I definitely relate to the experience of sort of representing the museum in some capacity, and also having my own thoughts and opinions about the museum and how it relates to community members. So I'm pleased to know that people know about both sides of that and don't just see me as a company person through and through. So what do you again talked a little bit about education around terms and concepts and sort of the normalization of things like rematriation and land back. Are there other specific things that you hope that visitors will either learn or take away from them after seeing your display?
Absolutely. It's the connection to the land. I think, and again, the exhibit is not super large, but it's, how much can you condense into about 90 characters? Not 90 characters, but 90 words. But I hope folks really take away the relation that we have with the land and that social contract that we have with the plant relatives, where they take care of us as much as we take care of them. We're kind of the last beings to come down from the sky world, and we're known, at least by Gichimani, or the great creator, is, ignorant beings, because we're still learning given our infancy. And so folks who see this exhibit, who uh, read these terms, relate it back to yourself of how do you see yourself in this land and beyond just what you see in the buildings, and try to imagine that underneath that is land. And folks not only have that contract to protect the land, but also to do right by our relatives.
And so I think could you talk a little bit about how this work, though it exists in a very different setting, like the museum setting is like you said, not your where you do most of your work, but how it relates to the community work that you do and how these are, connected as all things are.
Yeah, as all things, it's, I think what most people are communities are struggling with is like autonomy. And I really liked that aspect of the curation project, where I could dictate what I wanted to do, and so did everybody else. So like I immediately gravitated to the seeds, um, and also it's bringing in together, the pools of knowledge, such I discussed with, the staff that was available when, folks didn't have capacity. And I'm talking about like regards of staff, they brought in others. If they were, I went to seed, so I got specific staff who had knowledge of them, how they came to be, how this museum came into possession of it, the history behind it. And that's where all community activism and defending comes from, is that pooling of like communal knowledge, to be effective in that advocacy, um, for the benefit of the community. And so I see that pool in relation, and then just bringing it back to that this land defense. So like in defense of these seeds, these relatives, and bodies back, seeds back.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned the constraints of 90 words. It was a small case that we were able to use. Are there other things that you would have liked to include, other objects or other concepts you've wanted to incorporate in, but were limited by, we put you in a pretty small case with a low text limit?
Yeah, and and it's no shade to what was provided or even the program and one thing we haven't discussed is just that it's very new. This is the first year. A lot of growing pains that go into that. I think it would have been nice to have kind of our own room to have full display. So it's not, I'm not even asking for like all four walls to showcase things, but more of having that community representation of everybody. Like I understand the concept of every month somebody else gets represented, and I really like that. I would like to play with what that looks like. Maybe it looked a little funky given how everybody else brought different things to the table, but maybe that's the point. Community is not always. I mean, I think Rebecca and myself were joking about it weeks ago with like at least my piece being too symmetrical. So, you know, would the combined community curation be too symmetrical, or is that the point where it's so different and it doesn't quite fit, but it makes sense nonetheless? Additional aspects would have been we were given a kind of box, if you will, if you changing the dimensions, or maybe even the addition of audio could be something to be looked at, because it just brings on the engagement and brings, you know, the viewer, which could potentially be the listener, into the space, into the viewing, and maybe playing with where it's at. For everybody out there, this is something you can see for free. It's great. But at the same time, it's kind of where kids are kind of playing next to the VR Tyrannosaurus Rex. So, you know, as we're having deep conversation about seeds and what should be happening with them, you got a kid losing their mind of like, like that's the tail, which is like, we absolutely love. That's what they're there for. But a lot of great minds at the museum. And I'm sure after reflection, folks will have some great ideas. But maybe the change of scenery, maybe the addition of folks, and then finally some aspects to deepen the exhibit experience could be something to be looked at.
Yeah, I think one of the like you said, it's the first year and we definitely figured things out as we went along. But one of the things that I enjoyed about the program being moderating all the events is all of the gallery talks is hearing how everyone's pieces and their work sort of fit together and complement each other, and not a lot of other people, certainly not a lot of members of the public who see them got to have this same experience of all of the curators, all of their pieces, all of their work interplaying and complementing each other, because it was one case, and in order for something new to go in, someone else had to leave. But I think we're looking at for the next year ways to give it a sort of a bigger case, a bigger presence, and to make the objects go up for longer, a 3-month period instead of a 1-month period, to build more opportunities for engagement around the displays, and also to make everyone feel less rushed. But yeah, that's the end of my list of pre-approved questions and also off-the-cuff questions that I sprung on you. Any questions from our viewing audience? Alrighty then. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for taking the time to talk with us and for working with us throughout this process. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to see your display when it goes up.
Yeah, and again, tremendous honor to have worked with many of you, and yeah, excited to see it myself. We had a great work meeting and putting it all together several weeks ago, And yeah, I encourage folks who are seeing this, if this comes up next year, really think about it, applying and being a part of this. Jennings is a great coordinator. Definitely answer all your questions and keep you going. Rebecca's absolutely fantastic and just like the soul of the collection. And, don't be afraid. It'll be worked out. And really, taken every piece, second to last, but there's still mine and another exhibit going forward. Please check that out. And take back with you, what does that social relationship with this land, with the seed relatives, what does that mean to you? And tweet at the Science Museum's Twitter. Give it your answer. I'd like to see.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.